I'm a fan of fantasy, so I listen to Easy and Alan on their Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. Now here's Easy and Chris Allen.
And welcome to Wednesday night, 10 o'clock on the Sportscrew Radio Network. And we missed last week. We apologize. It's the holidays. Things were going on. Mm-hmm. I am joined with my co-host, Mr. Chris Allen. And how was your holiday?
It was great. We drove down we went down south to be with the in-laws for the weekend, and I think it was a good time. Yeah, the kids had a blast seeing the grandparents and great-grandparents. I got to get a little bit of rest, and so did my wife. So yeah, we all had a good time. Yeah, all had a good time.
All right, and it was Alabama, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, Birmingham.
That's what I thought you said. Down yonder. Well, good. Glad you had a good time. Did you get to watch football while you were down there, or did you get back in time to watch football?
Thursday watched all the games, but Sunday was unable to. I think we got back in time. I was maybe like halfway through the Patriots game, I think, by the time we got back home.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready? We're ready. We're going to talk playoffs.
Playoffs.
If you're listening to us now, you're in the playoffs, I'd assume, or you just, love the sound of my knowledge and my voice and everything I do and sweetness. Or you just want to hear what Chris had to say in his articles, because he's smarter than me. But all three money leagues, I'm in the playoffs. I have a second place, and a fourth place.
Look at you.
I know. Tom Brady's pass, the last pass to Edelman, bumped me from first place. I would have been in first place, number 1 seed, bumped me down to number 4 seed, and put you at number 2. Pretty upset about it.
So I heard.
No, I mean that's what makes it fun when you can look at one play. Now, I am one of those that go one play, it happened, but obviously I could have scored a point somewhere. I mean, it just, you go, it's Monday night. It's, 5 minutes to go in the game. I got this. I'm the number 1 seed. Awesome. Bloop, 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 4 passes, 70 some yards, a touchdown pass, and boom, you're in 4th place instead of first place. So it kind of sucks. Now in this league, we're playing for a big belt. So I know some leagues actually pay money out for the league winners. So obviously that would have been upsetting if there was money on the line there.
That's true.
I'm a believer in fantasy playoffs. Once you're in the playoffs, you have to beat it. You have to beat teams anyway, so, you got to put up points now. Yeah, the real AA, who's now the number 1 seed. We were playing each other. And like I said, it's been a pretty competitive league, but he's making fun of everyone because he's the one guy, he's a baseball guy. And, is talking about how easy football is because he just kind of cruised, through the season and got the number 1 seed. And now he has to play my son and then hopefully me. So he's talking about beating up on the family and,
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, being an expert, quote unquote. I mean, it kind of comes with the territory.
Right. Comes with the territory. Everyone's aiming for you, right? Everyone's aiming for you. Of
course, everybody's gunning for you.
Right.
It's expected.
Last night on my League of Anarchy podcast, and I know we've talked about this before, in that league, the top 4 seeds get to pick who they play. We don't just, number 1 doesn't play 8, number 2 doesn't play 7. You get a pick. Which and we talked about last night, that I think it's the only way to do it because
I kind of like that. I really do.
You work so hard to be the number 1 seed, and I know you've probably seen it too. There are times where that number 8 seed, they made it to number 8 because they're on a roll. You know what I'm saying? I mean, their team's gotten better and things. And I've seen people how do I want to say, lay down a little bit in the last week to maybe drop from a 2 seed to a 3 because they realize the matchup is better. Well, in our league, it's the opposite. I turned down a trade that probably would have made my team a little better. I'm not going to say a lot better because that I might have made a commitment, but it would have made my team maybe a little better. But it would have made it to where I probably would have lost one of the last 2 weeks, and that would have dropped me from then I probably would have been maybe a 3 or a 4 seed instead of a 1 or a 2. And in our league, being a 1 or a 2 seed means, you're going to get a pick.
Pretty big deal. Yeah.
Right. So
I almost prefer that than leagues that do like the traditional bye week. Because bye weeks, I mean, it's not like your own team really gets a rest. I mean, your matchups, like if you have, because I have a bye in a couple of leagues, and I'm planning for week 15, but man, I mean, there are like a few week 14 matchups that I'd really want to be able to take advantage of if I could.
Well, that's why we did it this way, because and some people don't like this either. We let 8 of the 12 teams are in the playoffs. And I know there's people out there who think, and there's people who say that. But because of this format, those last 2 that get in might be good teams, but there's usually out of that 8, there's usually 2 teams that are starting to really suck. But they may not be the 8 and the 7, that's what happened. Yesterday, our number 1 seed actually picked the number 4 seed because the number 4 seed's team has just fallen apart, injuries and everything else. So the fact that we let 8 in, you don't get a bye week. But because you're picking a pretty weak opponent that first week, that
you get an optimal week.
Right. Yeah. You're still playing, but you have an opportunity, but it's going to take that other team, so he picked the number 4 seed and then I picked the 8 seed. So, I'm the number 2. I ended up getting to play the 8, which actually is that team, the 8 team has actually gotten a lot better. But he has a very, very bad week matchup wise, and he's got some injuries and all that. So I'm taking advantage of that. So, and the other thing it does in the leagues is it gives you some, I don't want to say this. There's more pressure on you as the higher seed because now you picked that guy. So if he beats you, the trash talk's even worse. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Which I think makes it more fun. There's obviously more pressure on you to win because man, I hope I win. I picked the guy, I thought his team sucked and he ended up beating me by, something. So it makes it fun. So, but it's exciting. Three money leagues, 3 playoffs. So I'm feeling pretty good, but it's fantasy, still winning that. And that's always my goal every year. If I make the playoffs, I think I did a good, had a good year. And I think we've talked about that on other shows, that making the playoffs should always be your number 1 goal because the word luck isn't right, maybe, but now to win the Super Bowl requires some luck. Yeah. I mean, weird things can happen in these last few weeks and, it makes it tough. How are you sitting? I know you got a lot of best ball leagues. I don't know how many real, the Fish Bowl, did you make it into the tournament and the Fish Bowl?
I did not, unfortunately, not this year. So hopefully Scott Fish will bring me back in 2020. But yeah, my time in SFB9 is done. We did not end up as well as I'd hoped.
I'm voting for you. Put Chris back in. We need some rep. We need some rep out there.
We'll see how it goes next year. But yeah, when you draft Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger as 2 of your 3 quarterbacks in a 2-quarterback league, it makes things quite difficult. I'll just say that. Right.
It is hard, and that's what. Yeah. And in that league, I think you have waivers, but you can't trade or anything, right? It's just
no trading, just all fab.
Right, all fab. So, all right. What about any of your other? How are you doing in any of your regular leagues? I know the one league that me and you were in, the Sportscrew Radio Network League. You got the number.
Yeah, that one made it to the playoffs.
Our records are identical. I'm just saying. You might be the number 2, but we both had.
That means I scored more points. I mean, so I've got the record. I've got the tiebreaker. Yeah, so I guess I put together
head to head. I beat you, so I'm still. I don't know.
That's not true because I beat you when we played each other head to head.
Oh, did you? Darn it! I didn't think you'd remember.
By a lot, if I'm not mistaken.
I had a bad week.
But regardless, okay, we all have bad weeks. But in a couple other money leagues, I mentioned earlier, there's at least one of my leagues on Yahoo. I have a first round buy in that league. It was one of those ones where, and I know folks have been. This is about the time of the year where, or this week and maybe over the past few weeks. I know a lot of folks have been talking about, oh, like my draft grade on Yahoo was an F, and now I'm sitting at like 10-2, and like I want a first round buy, blah 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 blah. But I got a similar grade. I think I got like a D or something like that. And yeah, I think I finished up with the first round buy. And actually, surprisingly enough, it's a 12-team PPR league, 6-point passing touchdown. The part is irrelevant. But I wound up drafting both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Because Chris Godwin actually, I took Mike Evans at cost. It was like back end of the second, something like that. But Chris Godwin actually slipped to about the 6th round in this league. So I wound up picking him up because he kept falling and falling and falling. And I was just like, well, I'll just, and then nobody wanted to trade him. Like nobody wanted to trade for him because they didn't think that even when he was like the wide receiver 1. So I'm holding both the Bucs wide receivers. It's just kind of just been a wild trade for that one. But so a couple of my ESPN leagues, also made it to the playoffs in there. One of my like older leagues with a couple of buddies that I've known for about 10 plus years now, playing a league with them together for a while now. Made it. So hopefully we'll see how it works out this weekend. I could be like back-to-back Super Bowl champ. We'll see how it works out though.
Well, I'm always rooting for Chris. I'm always rooting, for my buddy Chris.
We'll see how it works out. And all of my and I have you see up on the whiteboard right there. So I've got three client accounts, as you see on my whiteboard that's been up there. If anybody wondering what that is in the back.
Right.
Yeah, so I've got 3 draft day consultants clients, and actually all 3 are in the playoffs. One is their league's playoffs started this past week, so round 1 of the semifinals, or at least half. So they do like 13-14 is the semifinals, and 15 and 16 is the finals. And he won, or he has like a 30-ish point lead going into the second half of the semifinals, so he's going to progress. My other client, he got a first round bye in his league, and then my third client, this is round 1 of the playoffs for him.
All right. So, good. Well, congratulations. And again, I'm sure people love hearing about us talk about our own shit, but that's why we're here. We do what we want.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, congratulations.
People care about your leagues.
Keep right. Everyone. That's the, everyone wants to talk about fantasy, but they only want to talk about their stuff. It's their team. So it makes it fun. Whatever makes it fun. And like I said, in our league, that's one where I did the podcast while we were drafting, and I missed Godwin and got Melvin Gordon instead. But I still, like I said, most of the season was at the top, and I'm the number 4 seed. Now I've got Melvin Gordon. This week I have Melvin. I'm starting Gordon and Eckler. They got a pretty good matchup in Jacksonville, so I'll start both of them. So now that being said, I would love to have Godwin on this team, to be real honest, because I'm rolling with Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, and John Brown, which is pretty good, and then Devontae Parker. So now I look and think about it, it's not. I mean, Godwin would be nice there, but I got some pretty decent wide receivers. So we'll see how it goes. Well, no one cares about us, so let's get into what we do here, and let's talk about your articles and the things you write for. And the first one, which especially right now, going into the playoffs, I think who you drop's pretty important because, and in most cases, if you're like me, I drop more people now than I do most of the regular season, because now I am looking for that streaming defense. It's, maybe I can use next week, or, if I'm not going to use them this week, I really have to look at them and go, are they a handcuff for me, or are they just sitting there and should I move and try to get something else that will help me next week if I move on? I know there's people out there that, but if you don't move on, it doesn't matter. But that doesn't matter. But at the same point, if you're not going to play them, they don't matter on your bench either. So you might as well, clean out the, take out the dirty trash, let's say, and get some clean trash on your bench and go that route. So your drop article, I'll let you pub it a little bit. Where does it drop at, and where can people read it if they want to read the article?
It's out at numberfire.com. It goes out every Tuesday, like early afternoon, along with JJ Zacharison's. I think he does 15 transactions on Tuesdays. So that one goes out along with. So if you subscribe to the Numberfire newsletter, I think that goes out, like almost daily. So on top of, and so the one that came out yesterday with his 15 transactions, my article is right next to his.
All right. So let's start at the beginning, which was a review of the people you said to drop last week. The first one, Vance McDonald. The question I just have there is he's got a pretty juicy matchup this week. I know this was for last week. And tight end is a little scary. But he didn't do all that well this week or last week, so that's fine. And he didn't do well the week before, which was against our Bengals. So he hasn't really been great. But that being said, you still think he should be on the drop list if you're playing this week and need a tight end?
I mean, I still think so.
Arizona's been terrible against tight ends.
I know, and I've seen the conversations, and like the folks on the analytical side, like I definitely understand it because I've seen folks like Derek Hardy, who works for Roto Grinders, even like Harmsmeyer, like a bunch of other folks. I mean, just trying to understand the trend that is like, why do tight ends continue to score touchdowns against Arizona? And it, like, at least from an analytical standpoint, it makes no sense. And I can understand like why folks want to buy into that. But at the same time, I mean, and we have multiple weeks, I mean, now, I guess essentially months of seeing this trend continue to happen. And in part, it's because not Vance McDonald, but Vance Joseph, who is the defensive coordinator for Arizona, and that's part of the leaks that his offense or his defenses have seemed to have. If you look at his time in Denver, that was actually one of the things that we were trying to target when he was still in Denver, like when he moved from defensive coordinator, like, and he became like head coach. Like part of their thing was that you target tight ends. I mean, like use tight ends to target that defense, and that was the case when he was in Denver, and since he's in Arizona, that's popped up again. So I guess it makes some sense if folks still want to hold on to him. And like after this past week, when Duck Hodges was actually able to perform well, I guess under not too much pressure from Cleveland, I guess it does make some sense if folks want to hold on to this week, just if you want to. Pay homage to the trend of the flowchart tight end against Arizona. But otherwise, I mean,
but you're really only holding on to him if you're going to play him this week, right? If you're not going to play him, you look for something else, right?
Yeah, because I mean, otherwise, I mean, other than that tight end narrative against Arizona, I mean, what do you really have to hold on to? I mean, he's not seeing the workload that be commensurate with a tight end that you would really want to start. I mean, he's seen like on average about 3 targets per week, and at least for tight ends, streaming tight ends, I mean, you're really looking for a floor of about 5 targets, and if he's not even really getting that, and Hodges has been more likely to pass the ball downfield to James Washington, Deontay Johnson, and take some of those deep shots, it's just not something I want to buy into.
It makes a difference this week if Juju Schuster plays or not.
It does, but at least all the reports I've seen so far says that he's still week to week, not day to day. So it sounds less and less likely like he's going to play.
Well, which is maybe another reason you could play him if you had to.
Sure.
Let's go to the next drop candidate that you recommended a week ago. Duke Johnson, you recommended dropping him. Then he had his most active week pretty much of the season. Do we think that's going to trend upwards, or was that just a fluke?
It looked more game plan specific than anything else. I mean, if there was ever going to be a time where Bill O'Brien were to wake up and try and get a little bit creative, it would be against his former team that he used to work for, and using somebody like Duke Johnson, which is much more athletic back than Carlos Hyde against, I mean, while most of their team is fairly athletic, but they have enough. I mean, there's just too many options for Deshaun Watson. I mean, especially if you have Kenny Stills, DeAndre Hopkins, and Will Fuller as wide receivers. If you have somebody athletic like Duke Johnson running out of the backfield, then that just creates, I mean, that's just a matchup nightmare. Like, that's not too many defenses can really account for all those options. So it just kind of made sense. If it wasn't going to be, because Kenny Stills wound up catching a touchdown, that was actually just right after a play where Will Fuller would have had a touchdown. Then it's going to be Duke Johnson out of the backfield. So I think it was more game plan specific than Bill O'Brien actually, kind of seeing the light in that Duke Johnson is a better running back than Carlos Hyde.
All right. I think this week, same thing. If you're not going to play him, yeah, I think you definitely could probably drop him.
Right.
But on this list, he'd be the guy if I could stash, maybe.
Sure, I can understand holding him.
Almost a little bit as a handcuff. If if the trend keeps moving up, maybe you can use him anyway. But if Carlos Hyde would get hurt, then obviously you might get something. Then Brian Hill, and then obviously Balaj is a no-brainer now because he's not even playing. So that was, I mean, now, so this week your drop candidates. Again, the first one, 94% owned on Yahoo, is Tevin Coleman. You have him as a drop candidate this week. I would have trouble playing right now any of the 49ers running back if I'm in the playoffs, to be real honest.
Yeah.
Be hard to drop him because kind of the same thing. If Mostert, gets hurt again or something, I don't know. I couldn't play Coleman, but I do understand, again, this week, if you can't play him, you might as well drop him.
I think that's really what it comes down to. Yeah, because, and I think we've talked about this before, is that like drop candidates don't mean that for sure you have to drop these players, like get them off your rosters right now. It's just that if you had to break ties in between like a guy, like a high upside player, let's say if you want to try and pick up handcuffs like this week, Alexander Madison, Darwin Thompson, like some of those guys, if you're really trying to break the bank in order to pick up those guys, I would break ties in favor of those guys versus trying to hold on to somebody like Tevin Coleman, where one, you saw him losing his starting job to another back. You also know he's in a committee, and like while San Francisco likes to run the ball quite a bit, if you're not going to start him, then he becomes a non-essential hold at that point. So again, it doesn't mean that you have to like just completely dump him off your roster, but at the same time, if it's your finals, is like if this is your Super Bowl week, because some folks like start their playoffs a little bit early, or if you're trying to make a stretch run and you don't know like what his workload is going to be, then I can understand it's a defensible position if you wanted to drop him. Right.
And again, it's which 49er back would you start if you had to?
For me, it'd be Matt Breida. I mean, it looks like he practiced in full earlier today. So between him and Mostert, like I would still prefer Matt Breida. But between the two of them, but either him or Raheem, I think would be honestly my best bet.
All right, another backfield that's pretty crowded, and I think I saw today where Marlon Mack was doing some stuff at practice today. You have Jonathan Williams as a drop candidate. I would have thought twice about dropping him now.
Yeah, that was kind of weird because I know that for like and this is like a complete aside, but I was just kind of thinking about the two parallels between Jonathan Williams kind of losing his job and then Ronald Jones like losing his job. And we figured out like why Ronald Jones lost his job, because Bruce Arians literally came out and said that he missed a blitz pickup and then that was it. That was it.
Still stupid.
I mean, yeah, it's a little bit like one of those like old school like coaching things that I really don't understand, and I've never heard anything similar throughout the year. And now with it being like week 13, I mean, it's hard for me to believe that he's never I guess it's not hard to believe, but it's hard for me to imagine like he's never missed a blitz pickup at all throughout this entire season, given how Jameis Winston has played. And then now he wants to institute this rule, but that's a complete aside. But we know why Ronald Jones lost his job. I went back and watched that game against the Colts. There was really no reason or like no rhyme or reason as to why Jonathan Williams like lost his job. Like it wasn't that he missed a blitz pickup. It wasn't that he didn't fumble the ball. And the Colts were playing well. And it just seemed like they just completely shifted to Nyheim Hines. Jordan Wilkins now all of a sudden got into the mix. I mean, this was after a guy that like literally ran for almost like 100 yards per game over his past 2, and then he got like 6 touches. I don't understand it. It didn't make any sense.
Again, there's a possibility Marlon Mack comes back this week.
Yep, practice earlier today, hand like heavily bandaged, but still at practice. So I mean, it
is a hand. I've seen running backs play with almost a cast on their hand.
Right,
I mean,
it's like a club that they're.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, it's not a leg injury or anything like that. I would be surprised now if we don't see Marlon Mack. To be real honest, so I would maybe even consider dropping any running back right now from the Colts, because I don't think I could trust playing any of them this week either.
Hey, you see that comment or the question from Jim? You want to talk about that real quick?
Yep. Jim Ross is asking on YouTube, if you're watching live, you can post a comment and we'll get to the question. He's asking a sit-start question, more or less. Carson, Ingram, or Gurley? He needs 2 of them. Gurley to me is on an uptick. It seems like now they're feeding the ball like the way we'd have hoped they'd have fed him all season. So I think Gurley for me is the for sure guy.
Yep,
to me, it comes down to Carson and Ingram. Carson and Penny, Penny looks good here and there. I think that's going to be more of a split this week than it even was last week. But Ingram's the same way. There's not the Ingram, Ingram's in a committee with his quarterback who's getting 100 yards. So that really comes down to it, in my opinion. So let's say first, do you agree that Gurley's a for sure?
Gurley's a lock for me, especially against Seattle. We'll have to see, check on to see if Jadeveon Clowney winds up playing, but otherwise, I mean, I still think Gurley's a lock. I prefer Ingram between him and Carson, just for the reason that you just stated. And also, I mean, with Baltimore, they're playing the Bills, and the Bills run defense, their run defense, they actually have their defense set up so that they will drop more players into the secondary, and they're more than happy to let you just try and gash them with the run, which really it won't work against Baltimore because they love to run. So, but it's still either way, with the way that they've been playing defense traditionally throughout the season, I think it sets up better for somebody like Ingram, or even Lamar Jackson, for sure. But Ingram for sure, that he'd be my pick out of those 3.
Right.
I guess between those 2, rather.
And Seattle, and they're both on the road, because Seattle then has the Rams. The Rams' record's not great, but their defense is better, I think, than their record shows. They got a pretty good front. Front line.
I mean, they completely shut down the Cardinals this past week, and I mean, in the Cardinals, almost in back-to-back weeks, they went toe-to-toe with the San Francisco 49ers defense, which is actually kind of surprising.
Also, though, but they don't have a Carson or they don't even have a Rashad Penny right now.
Well, that makes it even worse to me, because if Kenyon Drake was able to gash the 49ers for, I think it was definitely over 100 scrimmage yards, at least in their first contest, and I think he did actually fairly decent in their second. I mean, that was actually kind of surprising, and then just see the whole offense put up a dud against the Rams. So I would still go towards Ingram between.
And JR also said it was a standard, but I don't think those 3 standard has anything to do with it. I mean, none of those are pass catching backs much. So
Ingram's caught a few balls. But I mean,
like I said, my point is because it's standard, I don't think that weighed a whole lot here.
Nah,
not more than I would have thought. PPR would have changed my mind either.
Not a ton. I mean, because I think Carson has maybe 1 or 2 receiving touchdowns on the year. I'd probably say the same for Mark Ingram. He might have maybe 3 or 4, because actually I remember seeing he got one maybe just a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Now, you're the weather guy. Any idea what's going to be happening in Buffalo this week?
I haven't taken a look at the weather yet. I think by all indications, I think everything should be okay. But I
guess my question was would bad weather make it worse or better for Ingram? Meaning, does Lamar Jackson have a little advantage as a running quarterback in bad weather? Because obviously, moving, it just seems like they don't know what direction he's going anyway.
Yeah, I guess I can understand that, but like we had the same concerns, at least from a weather perspective, this past week. And like while Lamar Jackson did wind up losing a fumble, I don't really think that. And like Lamar actually came out specifically and said that the weather actually messed up with his ability to actually throw the ball.
Right,
but
the wind.
yeah, well, and the rain, like more so than the wind, but I mean, but his ability on the ground was, I mean, they were still able to operate on the ground, which has been their tendency anyway. So I don't really think, even if it was like poor weather, I'm not all that concerned.
Now, Jim wanted to know, is there any worries about the Seattle Rams game being low scoring? Well, Carson wasn't the one we were picking Ingram, but, I guess that could be the other thing. Seattle, but, Seattle's weird. Sometimes they'll win 14-7, and then they can win 31-28 when they need to.
As of right now, Vegas has that game total at 47 points, which is actually pretty decent.
Yeah, I consider that just a high average.
Yeah, that's pretty decent for a divisional game, and this is actually their second I think it's the second time that they've played them already. So that's actually kind of surprising that they have the total up that high.
Yeah. All right. Well, good luck, Jim. Like I said, I don't want. I think I would probably go Ingram also, but it's close. To be honest, you know me, the fan in me would look and go, you know what? 8 p.m. Monday or Sunday night, I need something to watch. I'll put it on. I'm going to play the 8 p.m. guy. I know that's I know that
he's already got one. I mean, because they'll have Gurley in that game.
Oh yeah.
So,
that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's what I meant. Oh, you're right. I wasn't even paying attention to that. I counted Gurley out so quickly.
Yeah, he's already got Gurley in that game.
But that being said, I love when I have a running back on both teams and I'm watching the game. This is, it makes that game always your guys on the field. You always have someone on the field. And it makes it kind of fun when you're
especially
watching.
With both of those backs. I mean, Rashad Penny and like his, I guess, shifting workload, like notwithstanding, at least with Gurley, it's not like he'll get game scripted out, right? Because it's not like they have some sort of like pass catching scat back that will come in and like take over like some early down or like some third down 2-minute drill like type stuff. There's no like Sony Michel, James White type of thing going on in LA with Gurley. And it's fairly similar with Chris Carson and Rashad Penny. Like, I don't think that all of a sudden they're going to switch and just like in the 2-minute drill, like Penny's just going to get all the work and they'll just have like Chris Carson down as the 2-down like bruiser or anything like that. So I think it's just going to be, you could wind up holding both of them, just have 2 bullets in the chamber on Sunday night if you really wanted to. But
hey, you know what? A lot of people get mad at me. Those are kind of things I'll do because I want it to be fun for me,
Right.
What do you got to lose? Watch a game with both your guys, sit back, crack a natty light and some popcorn and have fun. Jesus,
yeah.
It's fantasy.
I mean, that is a good point. I mean, because if you check your scores early, let's check and see, because the Baltimore plays, they play
at 1.
Right. So, I mean, me personally, I lean Ingram because at the very least you have one player still to go. So if things aren't looking so great, like through the afternoon games, you at least have that, that sliver of hope that you still got one good player. And like Todd Gurley, I mean, he's been playing pretty well as of late. So
yeah. All right. Have fun, JR. I mean, again, makes it fun. Sammy Watkins, cut him. I mean, obviously, if you used him week 1, you got something out of him, and he hasn't done crap after. I cut him in one league a few weeks ago. So I didn't, I would have no problem. Obviously, I think that's definitely a drop.
Actually, JJ Zacharyson had Sammy Watkins as a drop in his 15 transactions for this week.
76% owned. To me, in your article, that was the most.
That really surprised me too. I don't know.
That I thought was unique.
Well, I mean, I guess I didn't look at it. I didn't check and see like what his ownership was like prior to, because when Tyreek Hill went down when they were playing in Mexico City, and I know they had a bye like the week after that, but I'm wondering, and so that was week 12 or like week 11 or week 12, I forget. Yeah, so week 12 because they're off. Yeah, week 11 they were off week 12, and then they just played this past week coming off of a bye. So I'm wondering what his ownership level was like around. Maybe it spiked because of that injury, and folks weren't sure like what the workload was going to be. Because I would assume that I just can't believe that people were holding on to him. Like,
I think people did because at week 1, and then the injury came. Now
But he's missed a couple of games and like all this other stuff. So man, I guess people are
here's
really
my only
been holding
question:
hope.
in a deep league or a 14-teamer, they're playing the Patriots.
Mhm.
If I have a feeling if they're going to throw to anybody, the Patriots are going to cut. They're going to make it hard on Kelsey. They're going to make it hard on Hill.
Yeah.
Is this a game where Sammy Watkins is open? That's the scary thing.
I don't know. I mean, because
if it's going to be, it might be this week.
Right, because as we were just talking about earlier, where, I mean, the primary guys for Houston, like DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, I mean, Kenny Stills, I mean, those are the guys that will probably get like the Stephon Gilmore, McCourty, like that level of treatment from Bill Belichick. So if we're thinking that Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, I mean, if those guys are getting like the bulk of the treatment, who does that leave to kind of, soak up some of those targets?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really think that LaShawn McCoy at 30 years of age is now going to bust out with one of those, 150 scrimmage yards, like 2 touchdown, 6 catches for 60 yards, like one of those type performances. He might still have the juice in him. I don't know. But I mean, it kind of seems like if all of your primary options are going to be covered up, then you go to the guy that people aren't really thinking about. He makes
acrobatic catches. He has some skill.
He does have some skill. I mean, but at the same time, like he can make some just fingertip, like just catches. And at the same time, he could be alone in the end zone and just stone cold drop it.
To me, he'd be one of the, let's say you're a number 6 seed or an 8 seed or something. You just barely got in and you need some upside. He could be an upside flex where you go, hey, I'm going to put him in. Maybe he gets 20 points. I mean,
I think so. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, it could wind up being
2 points.
It might get you 2 points, and it'll be like Byron Pringle or Mecole Hardman that goes zooming down the field because everyone's watching Tyreek Hill, and they'll just wind up using Mecole Hardman because he has the same speed as Tyreek Hill, and he'll just go flying by for a touchdown.
All right. Oh, and I like how Jim accepted your
it was a collaborative effort. What are you talking about? We both agreed.
No, I like the fact he's at the end. I think that's all. I just like that he's not committal on using our advice. That's all.
Yeah. I would rather that. I would rather that they take the analysis and they want to mull it over versus just like blindly agreeing. Again, and then afterwards, if it doesn't work out, coming back and blaming us.
I'm going with Ingram and Gurley. I think is the 2 plays to play. Yeah. But fan in me is like, man, Gurley and Chris Carson, I'm going to have fun on Sunday night. It's a game by itself. Now, if it's a 1 o'clock game where I might not be able to watch, I might not care, but that 8:20 game, I might go, you know what? If it's a dice roll anyway, I might as well enjoy myself. Phillip Rivers got dropped in my 2 quarterback league and it didn't get picked up. He's on waivers. I like the guy. I still think he's got a good game or 2 in him. They have the Jaguars, who haven't been a great defense this week. But obviously I couldn't start him. I've looked at him because I'm starting this week on my own in my main home league, the League of Anarchy. I'm starting Tom Brady and Drew Brees. Drew Brees doesn't have a very good matchup, and I've debated, but I don't think I'd start Rivers over him. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Rivers has a better matchup, but I think I'm going to go with Brees versus, a good defense over even Rivers at this point. But it wouldn't surprise me if Rivers has a 400-yard game either. He can
pop up for those, but I would assume, at least based off of a recent history over the past month or so, that 400 yards is probably going to come with at least 2 interceptions.
Well,
and probably like interception within the last couple of minutes for them to lose the game.
Trust me, the way my scoring is in our league, I'll take 400 yards and 2 interceptions. I need a few touchdown passes mixed in there. Well, and see, the other thing is I have Keenan Allen on that team. So part of me was like, well, man, if he does go off, Keenan Allen could be a part of that. And man, I really could guarantee myself some big points. But if he craps the bed, Keenan Allen could crap the bed. And then I have 2 beds.
Exactly. That was hard to stomach.
I think I'm sticking with Breeze right at the moment. Good or bad, I'm not one of these people who looks too much. Never mind. I do look at my opponent's team quite a bit and mentally do analysis and stuff like that. but I don't necessarily adjust my lineup because of who I'm playing against.
Oh, sure.
But I'm playing against somebody who has Michael Thomas and has Kamara. So I'm playing. I have Breeze. He has Kamara and Thomas.
Yeah.
But the kicker is then I also have the 49ers defense.
Oh.
So, if Breeze does bad, my defense could do good to maybe make up.
Right.
I'm kind of playing it like
that's a lot of correlation right there.
I know, but if Breeze only gets me 10 points, but that gets my defense to get in the 20s, that's 30 points between them. I'll take that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, and if Breeze has only 10 points, the odds are Thomas and Kamara is not going to have a lot of points. So it's been fun to look at. I've analyzed that a few different ways now. It's just going to be a fun game to watch because we both have his two. I mean, those are his two main players. You know, I'm playing him in the first round, and his two main players are Kamara and Michael Thomas. So, and he does have Julio Jones, which I don't know yet if we're going to see or not, but
it looks like it. I think so.
I don't know. I was hoping not though. When I, decided to play him, I was hoping that that injury would, maybe help me a little bit.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right. That's our drops. Man, now we have to go. It's hard to believe how much we talk about drops. Let's get to our quarterback streamers, which, hey, if you've streamed quarterbacks to get you into the playoffs, maybe one of them hit and you've stuck with them. But obviously this is another big streaming week because there are some options out there. Let's review who you had last week as streamers. You obviously missed on Foles. Let's just throw that one out. That was bad. Sam Darnold, I would say you kind of missed on. I mean, he got you 10 points roughly in most standard scoring leagues, but you did hit on Tannehill and Allen. I don't think that's too bad. What do you think? Is Foles? Is it still part of the injury or just isn't as good as we thought?
Probably. I can't say if he just wasn't as good as we thought. I don't know if it was. I would assume it was mostly due to the injury. They might have just brushed him back a bit too quickly, because it looked like, at least for a time, that in his first couple of games back, that the aggressiveness was still there, still passing downfield. But yeah, like just a lot of stalled drives, and then the turnovers were just probably they were just too much.
And then Minshew came in and made a difference. I mean, you could see the offense pick it up right away.
I think that was more, and I've seen a couple of folks note this, and I went back and watched the last game, and I think the big thing to note is pocket mobility. I mean, Nick Foles, not to say that he is like a runner by any means, but at least from a quarterback's perspective, you'd expect them to be able to navigate the pocket like as it's collapsing. And while Foles is like this, this big, tall, kind of lanky dude, we've seen, even Tom Brady at 41, 42 years of age, like he knows how to escape pressure, kind of, bob, weave, and kind of move himself so he can get back to a throwing platform to get the ball down the field. Nick Foles doesn't exhibit that. Right. And I think the immediate transition you saw once Gardner Minshew got on the field was that, like he could escape pressure. Like he can use his legs in order to completely like duck out of the way of defenders and actually kind of like, spurt out of off the side of as the pocket's collapsing, get out and throw a pass down the field or even run. I mean, he was averaging, I think, probably between like 20 and 30 yards on the ground, whether it be from scrambles or design runs. I mean, that's what you get. That's the added upside like for him, and that's great for football because he's extending drives. It's also great for fantasy because that's points that we can count against his production. So I think those are, just I guess almost like night and day differences once Foles came off the field and Minshew came on the field.
So Foles is a drop candidate too. Would you put him on your drop?
Oh yeah, if he's not starting, he ain't worth holding. So definitely a drop candidate.
Then let's go to your streamers this week. Your top streamer is Minshew versus Chargers. Again, I kind of like him. Like I said, Minshew and Rivers are both on my waivers. And again, I'm starting Breeze. So I was kind of interested in your article because Minshew is available, Darnold is available, and Rivers is available to me. The issue for me is in our league, I can only hold 2 quarterbacks. It's a 2 quarterback league. It's a super flex league. So if I drop Breeze, if I want to pick up someone to play instead of Breeze, I would have to drop him. Now, that being said, if I make it to the next round, I'm only fighting against 3 other people to pick up somebody, and I might be able to pick Breeze back up because he has a little better matchup the next week. But
sure.
So I'm going to ask you each time, would you start Gardner Minshew instead of Breeze this week if you had that decision?
No, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I mean, I don't think I could.
But you do have him as your number 1 streamer. What do you like about him against the Chargers?
I mean, I was actually kind of surprised that, like, we already talked about like the positives from the offensive side of the ball. I mean, because he still got. We talked about the pocket mobility, his ability to extend drives, like the aggressiveness, and yada yada yada. I mean, he still has like Chris Conley, DJ Chark, and D.D. Westbrook. I mean, still a great trio of wide receivers. Leonard Fournette's out there, like he's still been like running routes and like catching passes. So he has like a plethora of options in the passing game. And then on the flip side, just looking at the defense, I mean, I know that everybody was super excited because like Derwin James was coming back like to the Chargers, like on the defensive side. I believe they had like one other defender that was also coming back from injury. And so they're supposed to be like relatively healthy, but still this past week against a rookie quarterback in Drew Lock that was literally like just activated like from injured reserve on Saturday. I mean, he threw for 2 touchdowns, and like I know he only had like about 150, 160 passing yards, but the big thing that stood out for me was that he took no sacks. Like this is a team that was like generating pressure and getting sacks on the quarterback almost routinely throughout the season, but against the Broncos and a rookie quarterback fresh off of IR that had not played at all this season, they got 0 sacks against this guy. So even if they're able to generate some pressure, I mean, we've already talked about how mobile and how Gardner Minshew can actually escape the pocket in order to generate some of those big plays downfield. I think that at least there's a path to him actually like presenting himself for a 15 to 17 point floor. I could definitely see over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns from him.
Now, is your outlook based on what Minshew did before Foles came back, or strictly based on what he did when he got in the game the other day? Because I've always told you in the past, I struggle with any stats when a quarterback comes in after the start of the game because the defensive coordinator didn't prepare for that guy.
Right. All of my evaluation is based strictly off of what he was doing while he was a starter. Gotcha. So even during his decline, I think like when they went overseas, they played that London game against Houston. I think he took like either 3 or 4 sacks in that game. I think that was probably one of his like worst performances like as a starter. And so I can understand like why they wanted to make that time frame like because they had the bye coming up. Nick Foles is ready to roll, so I can understand why they wanted to make the transition back to Foles. But even still, like that wasn't terrible. And so if Houston was probably like the worst in terms of like blitz pressure and like the them being able to generate pressure against the quarterback, that's the worst of it. And the Chargers couldn't even do half of that against a rookie quarterback. I think Minshew's in a pretty decent spot.
Right. And Minshew got dropped in most leagues. Mm-hmm. So he is available just about everywhere. I think you have listed 8% in Yahoo.
Yeah. So and they're at home. They're at home as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Chargers traveling like literally like all the way across the country. I know it's a 4 p.m. start if I'm not mistaken, but still, I mean, traveling across country for a game like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
a 4:05 start.
Yeah, I think it sets up pretty decently for me.
All right, and the next guy is kind of the opposite. I think he was higher owned at 43%, but I think that might have changed. I can't imagine he didn't get dropped in some places this week because he struggled against our powerful Cincinnati Bengals. Mm-hmm. And, your next streamer option is Sam Darnold, which you've had on this list on and off, actually almost every week. Mm-hmm. And obviously last week against our Bengals, he struggled. I realize it's Miami. Miami also looked better last week. Go ahead. Tell me why this is the week and last week wasn't.
Miami looked better offensively. I mean, they still made Carson Wentz. Yeah, they still made Carson Wentz look like the Carson Wentz that we had seen like during the first half of the season. So there is that. I mean, they've given up at least 250 yards passing and multiple touchdowns, 2 or 3, depending on which game you're talking about, almost in every game this season. I think the only game that they didn't do that was when Brian Hoyer made that quick start against them. I think that was in week 8 or 9 or something like that when Jacoby Brissett was out. So that's it. I mean, every other passer that they faced so far has reached that height of being like, if not in like the QB1 or a QB1, really close to putting up QB1 numbers. That's happened the entire season, and it hasn't made a difference. I mean, I know we've talked about Xavier Howard being like one of their star corners. It didn't matter if he was in the lineup battling injury on IR. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, so I think objectively from a matchup standpoint, there almost is no better matchup for a quarterback, like in terms of like a get right spot. I mean, Baker Mayfield was doing terrible for a number of weeks, went and played Miami, or not, like now he's back in our good graces, and then they did terrible this past week. But I mean, from a matchup standpoint, there are very few better matchups than playing against Miami. And then from Sam Darnold's perspective, this past week, I know that folks said, Patrick Doherty of Roto World, like I know I saw the tweet come across my TL that he had said like Sam Darnold's ghosts have logged on. And if folks weren't watching the game, right, and they just looked at the box score and said, 10 points, he must have sucked. I mean, of course, and 10 points isn't really like you're not really winning your week off of just 10 points. I mean, folks would make that same assumption, but going back and watching that game, like this isn't on Sam Darnold. I mean, he didn't throw like back-breaking interceptions. He threw no interceptions. I mean, and this was not a performance where you would go back and think that, okay, this is like something's completely wrong with the way the quarterback played. I think this was something that I think Adam Gase, for as much as people like to think he's some sort of offensive genius, I mean, it made no sense in terms of the number of pass plays that they called. I mean, Sam Darnold, he had been averaging around like 30 pass attempts for the past month or so. He passed the ball 48 times on Sunday. That makes no sense. Like, while Cincinnati has played, has been pretty bad, and
none to Bell. I mean,
and that's the other thing that makes no sense.
One of the best catching running backs we've had in decades, and they don't.
Right. And Le'Veon Bell, I think he wasn't really seeing any work even on the ground or through the air until like the second half, when the game was essentially over by that point. There was no way for them to come back and win. So it didn't make any sense. I mean, it wound up getting Sam Darnold wound up getting hurt. Like it was either his ribs or his toe or a combination of the two he was dealing with towards the end of the game. So I did not understand the play calling one bit in this game. Now on the positive side, I mean, we did see Robbie Anderson come back and actually have a 100-yard game for the first time this season. I think, the entire season for Robbie Anderson to crest 100 yards. So I mean, there was that connections back in full effect. So from a matchup perspective, that makes Robbie Anderson a really interesting play to me in Week 14, because if Jamal Adams, safety for the New York Jets, if he winds up sitting, I think that game is going to be one that, at least from a DFS standpoint, if you're definitely, you should be playing like Ryan Fitzpatrick, Devontae Parker, all those guys. Robbie Anderson, definitely get on that. If you have Le'Veon Bell, sure, go ahead. But from a DFS perspective, loading up on that game, even in cash games or in tournaments, I think is going to be very, very popular, just because the prices should be lower on most of those guys, minus Devontae Parker, because I think he's $6,900 on DraftKings. Yeah,
he's become a number one. He's a
number one wide receiver. Yeah. But the rest of the pieces, I mean, I'd be wanting to load up on all those guys, because I think that game total should wind up shooting out or hitting the over for that particular game, because they just have two pretty explosive offenses and just no defenses. It's going to look like one of those college games where it's 40 to 30 something.
All right. I have to ask. Drew Brees, Sam Darnold.
Drew Brees.
All right. I don't know. You were overselling it so much I had to ask.
I mean, I have to have some conviction about my play.
Your deeper league streamer, Ryan Tannehill, which I like. Man, the guy's looking good.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm trying to wrap my head around this whole Ryan Tannehill, let's quote unquote explosion over the last, because he started I think in week 7 or week 8, so the past 6 or so weeks. And to be honest with you, Ryan Tannehill, objectively better quarterback than Marcus Mariota. Let's just get that out of the way. But I don't think that his performances, like while they've looked great in the box score, I don't think that he's as good as the numbers indicate. I think that's kind of where I'm landing. Like, I don't think he's being asked to do more. Like, he's just being asked to perform the system the way that it was intended for Marcus Mariota, and he's just being able to execute where Marcus Mariota could not. Because it's not like he's being asked to pass more. I mean, I think over the past couple of weeks, he's only passed like maybe like 20 to 25 times per game, and he's just been efficient on those throws. So it's not like he's putting up like 350 yards passing and 3 touchdowns or anything like that. I mean, the rushing like from him definitely helps. I think he's put up at least 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns. So it's not like he's become a different quarterback. I think he was a good quarterback when he was still in Miami. It's just that now with him actually being in a system that plays in a much better system, and he's not out from he's out from under Adam Gase, since we're just talking about him and Sam Darnold. I mean, then I think this allows him to actually achieve his maximum talent level, and I think this is about as much as we can possibly expect from him.
All right, I'm not going to get too much into your honorable mentions because we're running a little late, and you know what? It's the playoffs. There's only half your leagues aren't playing anyway, so pretty much the guys we named should be available, and I think
they should
all better than your honorable mentions. But obviously the look ahead guy, is there any possibility I could win? No, you jumped ahead. Is there any possibility that I could win a Super Bowl championship in fantasy this year with a Manning as my quarterback?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
If you can grab a Manning this week and put him on your bench to play next week against the Dolphins, that could be. And I really thought that when I heard this morning. That's the retirement game. That's the game where they let Eli. They let Eli throw like he's never thrown before, and he throws for like 216 yards. But
that'd be like, what was it when Kobe Bryant went out? His last game where he just went out. He took every single shot, scored 60 plus points or whatever. This is going to be Eli Manning's game where he's just going to put up. He's just going to they're not even going to bother. Just tell Saquon Barkley to go have a seat somewhere.
He might throw to Barkley 15 times.
No, forget about him too. No, forget about him because we don't want to get him injured.
No, I have Barkley on my fantasy team.
We don't want to get him injured. So I mean, have him go take a seat somewhere. Tell Wayne Gallman to go stand back there. He's not even going.
Golden Tate, baby. Golden Tate.
It's going to be Golden Tate. It's going to be Evan Ingram. It's going to be Sterling Shepard. It's going to be Darius Slayton. He's just going to fill the air with footballs from the whistle blow to to the end of the game.
This week they have the Eagles, so I think they're going to play a pretty good. They're going to just have a regular game plan. But I do think next week. Next week they have nothing to lose with. They'll just let Eli throw it all around against the Dolphins. So you would look ahead. That would be your pickup. You think?
Absolutely.
You think Eli's going to be one of your streamers?
It's going to be absolute chaos because I will write him up. I will be writing up Eli Manning next week. I'm going to love it. And
I already love it. Because I thought it as soon as I heard some of that this morning and started looking ahead at the schedule, because I really thought Daniel Jones would be some kind of a put back guy.
Because just think about the process. And I feel like folks hate that nowadays where we talk about trust the process or follow the process. But I mean, if you were to think about this from just not even in a vacuum, but just look at all the data we have in front of us that tells us that a quarterback's against Miami is an objectively good matchup. And if you believe that, because we've seen that from week 1 all the way up until now, it honestly doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It could be a rookie. Yeah. Because we've seen that happen all the way up to a seasoned veteran. And now you're going to tell me that
and even an overseasoned
veteran with Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, and Darius Slayton. And
I know you don't like counting Barkley, but I still think he'll dump to Barkley because
and
I actually like Barkley more this week for me because I think against the Eagles, dumping the ball down to Barkley is something Manning was doing anyway. That's what he did all last year. I think. So I actually like the Barkley drop off because I think Pride, they're not going anywhere, but Pride, they're playing the Eagles. They want to beat the Eagles. So
yeah, they definitely want to play spoiler to the other folks in their division. And then especially for, as we just talked about, like if this is going to be, kind of Eli's, farewell tour, and they want to, throw him out there and have him play well. I mean, that there's no better opportunity than having him play against the Dolphins. I mean, it's just then you couldn't script it any better.
I know. I mean, again, I saw it right away. All right, that gets our quarterback streaming. Your 2 articles. That was great. We have one quick question. Math Quest in the chat room on YouTube. Pick 2 receivers: Amari Cooper, Lockett, Parker, Sutton. Standard scoring. Obviously, Lockett struggled. I really believe Parker's the one that's I put Parker ahead first because I think he's the only target for Fitzpatrick, and he's probably going to get you the touchdown in a standard league. So to me, it comes Cooper and Sutton. The young rookie quarterback seems to like Sutton already, but I'd have to go with Cooper if he's healthy.
Yes, I would agree with you there. Cooper and Parker for me as well. Cooper, I mean, even though they do have those they're playing tomorrow night, so they have the Thursday night game against Chicago, but as I'm from report earlier today, at least one of their players in the secondary is supposed to be out tomorrow for Chicago, so it definitely opens up the passing game. So while they're on the road in Chicago, the weather doesn't look like to be a factor. It will be cold, but like there's going to be any precipitation, no wind or anything like that.
And it's a must win for the Cowboys.
Absolutely. So I do think that Cooper is in play. So I would definitely lock him in. And then, Devontae Parker. How can you get by what he's been doing over the past 4 weeks or so? Yeah. So while I definitely like what Courtland Sutton's been putting down on tape. He's made a lot of just ridiculous grabs over the past couple of weeks and putting up multiple touchdowns. And then Lockett, he's one of my favorite players in the league, attached to a really good offense.
Last week scares me.
Yeah, I mean, he was sick. He was one of the players that were affected.
He was on the sick plane. He was on the sick plane. I mean,
because I saw the report from Schefter. It was an hour and a half before the game where they mentioned that him and David Moore were affected by the flu. Also on top of that, with his leg injury a couple of weeks back, shortly before their bye. So with all that combined, I mean, it's hard for me to just immediately go back and they're playing against, the Rams. I know typically it's really just Jalen Ramsey now that you have to be at least concerned about, but still, I do have some reservations. So I would lock in Cooper and I would lock in Parker.
All right. Well, Math Quest, thanks for the question. Jim Ross, thanks for being out there in the chat room. Chris, where can people find you and, to read these articles and to keep up with what you're doing?
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX. All of my work, well, not all of my work, half of my work is over at 4for4 Football, 4for4.com. I actually helped the TJ Hernandez, who's the director for DFS over at 4for4. We actually did a collab piece this past week as he looked into some of the weather trends and how DFS players have taken weather into account. So we were working together on that, and that piece actually dropped yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, yesterday. But normally quarterback streaming on 4for4 out on Tuesday. Drop targets, number fire also out on Tuesday, and then the weather report also for number fire, and that should be out this coming Friday.
Well, good. Like I said, if you're listening to Chris, go read Chris, and if you're reading Chris somewhere, come here to listen to Chris. Because I will, hey, you read articles about these people. It's nice to ask them questions sometimes about what they, and you know me, that's what I do. So,
and tell me I'm wrong.
Sure. Well, I don't think wrong is something I've ever said.
You tell me I'm wrong.
All right. I might. It's just sometimes the fan in me thinks a different way, and that's what makes it fun. So, like I said, you can find us both here every Wednesday night. 10 o'clock live on YouTube. Yes, I'm Easy Kill on Twitter, just at a fantasy fan. And I have a couple of different shows, but if you have more start questions, you can DM them to me on Twitter, or me and Lou Landers do a live show on Sunday mornings, 11:30 to 12:30, where we answer a ton. We're over 400 views now on that show And we have a lot of questions sent to us during the week, but we now get a ton of questions live during the show. So
awesome.
If you guys want to come there and ask questions then and try to get more sit start, I'm assuming it's going to be a little slower this week just because there's less people playing now with the playoffs. But sit start questions become you can look at it two ways. Look at it two ways. I kind of do it a different way. I don't have sit start questions right now because I have nothing but handcuffs and emergency players, and I'm starting my studs and I'm done. I mean, that's kind of my thing now. And, I have 3 good running backs. I have 3 good handcuffs. If I have 3 or 4 good wide receivers, I might keep 1 extra. And then I might have an extra defense for next week, and I just, that's kind of the way I roll right now. So I'm even though I'm in playoffs, my sit start stuff becomes a little less, decisions on Sunday because I got here with this team. Now I'm gonna, set it and forget it and sleep like a baby.
Try and grind it out.
There you go. So thanks everybody for coming out. Chris had a blast, learned a lot. Always. I don't know. I'm wishing you luck. Me and you need to, at least now the way the bracket worked out, me and you can meet in the Super Bowl.
There we go. Let's make it happen.
We at least ended up on 2 different brackets. So that's our
tomorrow night. I've got a couple of guys going tomorrow night.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. All right. Again, see you next Wednesday. Chris, you know the drill. Say goodnight.
This has been Just a Fantasy Fan Podcast. And to keep your fantasies going, follow us at justafantasyfan.com. Say good night. Good night.